There are some questions for Kathryn, but first of all, I'd like to welcome a few other people onto the stage. This last session is to look at some of the hidden disabilities. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it is absolutely impossible in a 1.5-day conference to cover every topic. And as I said, we could have spent 4 days here together with the people that quite rightly wanted to come and discuss their particular speciality and topic. But I wanted to try and make sure we gave you a full flavour across the range. And there are many hidden disabilities that go unrecognized, as many of us know. So if I may, please can I welcome onto the stage John Henderson from the Dementia Action Alliance. John, I need to put my teeth back in. Peter and Kate Shippey, please, the co-founders of the Shippey Campaign. And last but certainly not least, Holger Jegminat from the DEAF Fanclubs in Germany. Oh, can I have the clicker? Who's got the clicker? Sorry. Thank you. Thanks. If I may, I'd like to turn to Kate and Peter Shippey first of all. And if we could just ask you to introduce yourselves and just briefly explain what you've been up to and the reasons why. And we've got a few slides that perhaps you can talk us through that will help to explain to the audience the area that you are particularly passionate about.
Yes, thank you for inviting us here today, Joyce. It's great. My wife and myself, we've got 3 boys. Nathan, who's 8, Owen 4, and Callum 3. And all 3 boys are autistic, also from autism spectrum disorder. And my oldest boy, 8, Nathan loves the football, wanted to go to a match at Sunderland. So knowing he's autistic, we knew we'd have difficulty with that, but we thought we'd try it, because like all of us, we're all equal, and he wants to watch a live match, and he should have the opportunity to do it. So we gave him earplugs, ear defenders, just trying to prepare him as best we could. Took him to a game, and very quickly, he was sort of cuddling into us, couldn't deal with the noise, too much, so we never saw the end of the match. So went home, thought that was that. But still, when he got home, he was watching the football on the television and wanted to still go to a match. So the following season, we thought we'd get tickets in what's known as the Black Cats Bar at Sunderland, which is an area where you can go out into the main bowl of the stadium and watch the game, but then come inside to a lounge area if you was finding it too difficult. But again, first game of the season, he was in the lounge, we went out to watch the game, and he couldn't deal with the noise. So we're like, oh, we've got a problem. So my wife and myself came up with the idea of coming up with a sensory room, or a room specifically for people with sensory needs, people on the autism spectrum, or people with Asperger's, or everything on that big spectrum, a certain room that could go in to watch the match in a place where they'd feel comfortable. So you can see on the picture there, the room we've got at Sunderland now. I think Sunderland's the first club in the country to do it, possibly in the world, I'm not sure. But we last season did a big campaign. We got a big petition with thousands of signatures, got emails sent in, and we're sort of really thankful for Sunderland for being the first club to do it. So it gives him a place where it's appropriate for him to watch the match, and it's available for adults and children to go in there. We've currently got it where you work on a sort of a pairs basis, so you have the disabled fan and a carer in there with them. And I think that was at the last Newcastle match we're there at, with the 3 boys in there. Inside the room, being a sensory room, there's a bubble tube in there. There's like things which are appropriate for them. There's a PEX, a picture exchange board in there for non-verbal autistic people. There's going to be a tactile wall, which we're still working on at the moment. So it's more appropriate for them. And personally, now that Sunderland have done it, we're trying to get it around the Premier League and spread worldwide. Into other sports. We've contacted like Silverstone, Murrayfield. We're at on Wednesday in Scotland, the rugby ground, and they're interested. So they're very promising that they're going to do one. We've contacted Rangers and Celtic. So we're just hoping how it goes from here, you know, because that facility should be there. Because you think about people in the wheelchairs and the catered for, but there was this gap in the market for people who have like sensory needs. Just suddenly thought, well, they're not catered for. It's quite straightforward. So just really proud that Sunderland have done it first, and hopefully it'll go really big from here, you know.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
We keep mentioning those champions. Here's another example. Forgive us, because I think we did have a few other slides that showed some of the different lighting tubes and so on, which was why I was flicking through. I wasn't trying to confuse you, but forgive us. I think we've got them muddled up somewhere. But I think, Kate, explain to us, you have 3 boys that are passionate about football. So I think I understand where you're coming from, but tell us a little bit about how that feels as a mum and why this is so important.
Well, every day gives us a different thing to deal with, really, because all of our boys are very different as well. Their autism isn't the same. That's why it's a spectrum. It's huge. The thing that we found difficult was initially saying no to something that Nathan was so passionate about. And it was difficult for him to hear no when it's a sport that a lot of his other friends were enjoying. They were going to the football matches and experiencing the atmosphere. And he couldn't deal with that. And for him to not be able to do that was really upsetting. He was devastated. The other boys, our 2 younger ones, they were becoming disappointed because they were realising that some doors were closing to them too. So for us, it's just been an outstanding achievement to create this room. We've also found that the other families who've been in the room, it's been quite an emotional thing for them, because there've been some mums and dads who thought that they'd never be able to take their children to a football match, and it's actually happened for them. So it's been quite an outstanding thing. Yeah, it's actually, the room's been so popular that it's been sold out every match, and we'll have a waiting list as well. So there we go.
There we go. There's that good business sense yet again. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the work you're doing. I'm sure there'll be some questions from the floor. I'm just going to ask the other panel members to say a little bit, and we'll come back. But huge respect as well for what you're doing. I think there's a common theme here. There are mums and dads, family members that are understanding that sometimes you just have to lift that baton and make things change. And well done to you, and well done to Sunderland for setting the standard. And as you say, let's hope this happens at a lot of other clubs. If I may, I'm going to turn to John next, actually. I'm going to mix it up a bit. I'll come to Holger in a moment. John, we met a couple of months ago, and I know you have a very special reason for wanting to share your story and the importance of dementia-friendly football stadiums. So if I may hand over to you, I'll hand you this actually, because you've got a few slides to go through. You just need to press the green button quite hard and it'll flick. The green one, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce. First of all, thanks very much for the invitation to come here, principally because I'm Scottish. And, well, I've got an opportunity to come to France and the Stade de France, because we can't do it watching our team play, so thanks a lot. Now, I work for an organisation in the UK called the Alzheimer's Society. It's a major society addressing the needs of people with a condition called dementia. And those 2 titles at the top there, Dementia Action Alliance and Dementia Friends, represent a 2-pronged approach. The Alliance, as the name would suggest, is to try and build up a supportive network of organisations, quite simply, to help people with dementia to continue doing everything they've always done for as long as they can, which of course includes football. And in the UK, I'm not sure about European statistics, but there's 850,000 people with dementia, 2/3 of which live in their own homes. So there are husbands, wives, sons, daughters, they're our next door neighbours. They're not in care homes, they're not in a hospital, they live in our community. And to help us do that, we've launched an initiative called Dementia Friends. There's 1.3 million people in England at the moment, and 500,000, I think, in Scotland. We're going to get 5 million people in the UK to have experienced a 1-hour training session, or information session as it's called, which just gives a glimpse of some of the challenges that people with dementia face. Now, I know you're probably all statted out after today, but across the EU, there are 10.1 million people living with dementia. And you think, wow, well, what does that mean? It's tough, isn't it? Well, by the time you get to 65, and that's 10 years off for me, you'll have a 1 in 14 chance of developing dementia. Or in other words, in this room here, including the people interpreting, 15 of us will have dementia. There is no cure at the moment, okay? So we either sit back and go, oh dear, what we're going to, oh, we can't do anything, or we can do something about it. And obviously, my passion is to address the needs of people with dementia. My other passion, of course, is football. And the reason why I'm a football supporter is because my dad bored me senseless with Real Madrid 7, Eintracht Frankfurt 3, Hampden Park, European Cup Final 1960. He was many things, but he was a massive football fan. He also developed dementia. And towards the end of his days, unfortunately, he couldn't recall that individual game. So that was a difficult situation. But the thing about dementia is that it's an umbrella term. And the most common form of dementia, which you've obviously heard of, it's there, is Alzheimer's. And it commonly presents as a loss of memory. There's 100 different types of dementia, but a loss of memory. But what it means is that if someone's, say, 70, 75, it's likely they can remember crystal clear their lives when they were 40 or 30. And of course, as football fans, we know they can remember the games they went to. And my passion is, and we all know the reach that football gives. I don't know about you, but I don't define myself as a 55-year-old bloke who lives in York. I define myself as a Manchester City supporter. I'm sure you're all the same. So let's get football involved in helping people doing the things they've always done. So, Dementia Awareness Match. This is where a football club, in this case Leyton Orient, which is in East London, publicised the fact that we should all get behind this campaign to understand a little bit about our neighbours, our friends who've got dementia. And we continue them to come to the football ground. So in the pictures there, you'll see a group of people with dementia and their carers invited to the ground. We've got players on the right-hand side publicising Dementia Friends. We have my colleague Kelly there with the manager and the chairman of the football club, and also a carer from the Alzheimer's Society with a Leyton Orient supporter with dementia. If you lose your short-term memory, you might not be able to tell at the end of 90 minutes what the result was, but you will feel it. You are a football fan in that moment. That never, ever leaves you. When that ball goes in the back of the net and you get that rush, you know, just because you've got dementia, that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It matters. We live in the moment. Another initiative, a memory match, very similar. This is where football clubs say to their supporters, bring all your old memorabilia, your hats, your scarves, your rattles, I don't know if you had that in Europe, your football programmes, bring it to us, and we can then use that in something called reminiscence therapy. I gave that example again. People of a certain age can remember crystal clear a match. Okay? So if those football clubs get their fans to bring all of their memorabilia, you don't need any expensive equipment to do reminiscence. You've all got it in your lofts underneath your bed, haven't you? It's all there. Well, these football clubs are saying, bring it down and we can put it to real use for our supporters. Again, a few more initiatives. Sport and Reminiscence. Manchester City have a walking football initiative, which is basically people over 50 can still continue to play football. People with dementia are invited to play football. And obviously, if you've got dementia and you've lost your confidence and you're feeling a bit isolated, this is a way of reconnecting, playing football, reconnecting with your friends, reconnecting perhaps with a football club that you might think have forgotten them. And obviously, I don't want that. And very briefly, Joyce, I will finish. Now, I'm no Eric Cantona, and no presentation on football is complete without a Chinese proverb. That's what I always say. But that says there, when you drink the water, remember with thanks those who dug the well. And I'll make no apologies to this, and with due respect to people from UEFA and FIFA. Guys, it ain't your game. It's our game. And you are the custodians of our game. And all the big badges, all the big clubs, even Manchester City, I was speaking to David earlier on today, most important thing, MCFC. It's not Manchester, it's not City, it's not football, it's club. Right? We all made the club, all of us, including people in those crowds there, including those players, Stan Bowles, Jeff Astle, both. Jeff, unfortunately, no longer with us, died with dementia. Stan, diagnosed with Alzheimer's 6 months ago. He's got a game today, in an hour and a half. 2 of his former clubs, Queen's Park Rangers of Brentford, are playing for his benefit, raising dementia. Please don't forget, it's those guys on the terraces, and it's also those guys on the pitch that are now living with dementia that gave us our game, and please remember them.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, John. We'll come back to some questions in a moment, but thank you very much indeed. So lastly, but not least, Holger, you and your colleagues that are here, it is really important that you came today and raised the profile of deaf fans. It's an area that I personally feel has been overlooked for an extremely long time. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the day, hard of hearing is a condition that many of us will start to develop as we age, often initially not realizing. So it's an important topic. And when we look at how we design our stadiums, the services we provide, we must not forget our deaf and hard of hearing fans. There are some very simple things that we can do in stadiums that don't actually cost very much money. We can ensure there are hearing loops or induction loops that increase the volume of sound for people who use hearing aids with a special T device. We can ensure that at events like this, we provide sign language. But also we have to think about other practical aspects. What happens when most of us hear the fire alarm, as an example? If you are deaf, you will not hear a fire alarm. You may think if you're in a stadium, you're going to understand because everybody else is starting to leave the stadium. But what if you're the one lone fan who happens to be deaf that is in the toilet at that moment and doesn't hear an alarm? So something as simple as a visual alarm. It's not an expensive device, but can have a huge impact for a deaf or hard of hearing person in any environment and for a fan in a football stadium. Holger, what I would like you to do, if you may please, is to describe for us why this is such an important topic and just what football means to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you also for the invitation to be here. Let me go back in history a little bit. Want to take you back to 2006 when I created with a number of friends the first HSV, Hamburg Sportverein Deaf Football Fan Club. And at that time, I didn't have much idea of what it would mean to have an accessible football stadium. We're the first deaf soccer fan club, and within no time we'd reached 100 members. Now, going into the stadium, we noticed a few practical problems, but we, as deaf people, were happy to talk together, talk through the matches, and just keep attending the matches. But after a while, we felt there was something missing. Now it's 2008. When I met somebody from the DFL, German Deutsche Football League, and he started mentioning accessibility, and he mentioned wheelchair users, blind people, and then it struck me, like, wait a second, what about accessibility for us deaf people? In the meantime, we have many deaf soccer fan clubs. For example, Bayern München, by now we have 13 clubs. We now have a platform where we exchange experiences, and discuss barriers we're facing. For example, in football stadiums, there's big screens, announcements are made, but not subtitled. Just as a simple example, this is something we've been campaigning for, and as the number of deaf soccer fan clubs grew, we became more active. And in 2013, we created in German it's called the Dachverband, an umbrella organization of all deaf local club supporters. We now have 14 local members, or local clubs as members, over 600 individual members. And there's a couple of barriers we want to break. Number one, deaf people, deaf fans want to sit together. Hearing people really often wonder why. But imagine a big stadium, 50,000 fans, with perhaps 20 deaf individuals sitting throughout the stadium, not aware of each other's existence, each other's presence. You meet each other in the deaf club a couple of weeks after the match, and you discover that you've both been at the same match, and you weren't aware of each other. So we want, like a wheelchair section, we want a deaf section, a deaf fan section. This is really important. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, or which club you support. It should, of course, be in the corner of the stadium, because for all our information, we all depend on our eyes. Don't also forget some older deaf people who have some visual problems. There's a subpopulation of the deaf community who have Usher syndrome, which creates a tunnel vision. So we need a proper place together with no people crossing in front of us, breaking our sight line. We need to be relatively close to the pitch. I think these are the most important, or that's number one, most important. Number two, the big screens, all information. If a song is playing that has lyrics to it, subtitle it. And this is something I find intolerable in 2015, that this type of information is not made accessible for deaf and hard of hearing people. Also in, let's call it the deaf section. In a match, in any soccer match, there's, let's say, officials. If there is an injury, maybe it would be possible to have of all the interpreter's looking for the word here, all the officials that are around the field.
Stewards. Stewards,
thank you. It would be great for every big event, for every soccer match, to have one steward who knows sign language. And let there be the stewards close to the deaf section. So that all information that is made public. You mentioned the fire alarm, but also I can think of other events. I think actually having information or alarms visible, having information subtitled, will not only benefit the deaf and hard of hearing community, but also all the non-visually impaired people. I'm sure that a lot of information that's spoken in stadia gets lost in the noise of the crowd. So I think it's a tiny investment. In terms of money, it's next to nothing it'll cost. And it'll benefit everybody. Finally, on club websites, you see an increasing number of video clips, interviews with players, interviews with trainers that are not subtitled. Why? There are parties held, there are Christmas parties at soccer clubs, videos are published on the website that are not accessible for the over 10% of the population that are deaf or hard of hearing. Now, that was my experience in Germany. Now, I've attended European Championships, World Championships, Champions Leagues, matches, and how accessible are they for deaf people? Zero. I watched the Champions League finals. I watched the official UEFA publications. They mentioned accessibility measures for hard of hearing people, for wheelchair users, visually impaired people, none for deaf people. I was in London 2012 for the final. Yes, it was the final in London in Wembley. It was München against Dortmund. There were 400 deaf people present in the stadium. There was no interpretation, no subtitled information at all. One deaf fan got an injury during that match. There was no steward, no support services that knew sign language. So he had big trouble in terms of communication from the stadium, during the transport to the hospital and in the hospital. So when there is a deaf section, when you're discussing accessibility, think of deaf people. Whether it's during World Championships, World Cups, European Championships, Champions League finals, all the way throughout. I'm tired of having to battle this. You carry the torch, please, with us.
Thank you.
And we're not just... And we'll be happy to talk to you afterwards in the pub and have a beer with you. But during the match, we want to be together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. There's some very important points that Holger has raised. As he said, many of them are really easy to implement. What I can tell you is that for both the Euro 2016 and for the future FIFA World Cups, that there will be dedicated stewards that are specialised in the needs of disabled fans, but in particular there will be stewards as well that are able to sign in international sign language. So I hope we're beginning to go some way on that journey, but let's keep talking to each other and let's keep pushing for further change. And I think there are some clubs out there that will appreciate hearing more about what you've done in Germany and perhaps what we can do in other countries as well. I'd like to turn back, first of all, if I may, to John. Just to briefly ask you, John, to explain just a little bit about what Leyton Orient have done in terms of a match day, because I know there are clubs out there saying, we want to get involved, we recognise, we understand, there's a lot of publicity about the increasing prevalence of dementia and how many of us are likely to be affected by dementia. And, you know, I've certainly seen a number of informative documentaries explaining that it's important to let somebody with dementia live in the moment that they're in, rather than tell them that they're not in that moment. And it's also often that they have a long-term memory that is the last to go, which is another important aspect. So if I'm a person at a football club, a disability access officer that's out there, just a few very headlines of the sorts of things that have happened at Leyton Orient that they can consider to welcome dementia fans.
Well, it will be a few because we are right at the ground floor. I have taken on the responsibility, it would appear, to make football in England dementia friendly. We have less than 8 clubs that are part of the Dementia Action Alliance, one of which is Leyton Orient. And the sort of things that they do in a match day, but generally, actually picking up from the point from the previous speaker, is that all the stewards, everybody who sells the food, everybody who's on the gate, sells the programmes, etc., have gone through that Dementia Friends information programme. It's in English, it's on www.dementiafriends.org.uk. It's a 3/4-hour information session that you can do online. And that is absolutely vital, because very much like my colleague here, speaking to football fans with dementia, and people with dementia in general who, I say, live in our communities, all they really want is a little bit of patience, a little bit of time, and a little bit of respect. And I know we're here to talk about stadia, but you know what? You could have a ramshackle stadia, but if you've got great stewards, the difference it makes to people with dementia, in fact, I would suggest anyone facing the challenges of a disability, is the absolute key. So, for example, what Leyton Orient will do is have a situation whereby they're developing signage that addresses issues with people with dementia. So, for example, a lot of use of symbols on a door for a toilet. You don't have the sign next to the toilet door, you have it actually on the toilet door. And obviously, picking up from your situation as well, there are forms of dementia that do affect the sight. So we're looking into that. But it's very, very much work in progress. And I'm not here saying that UK or England have got everything to teach you. We haven't. Everyone's learning step by step. I just think it's one of the situations whereby I know this little session is a hidden disability. I don't want people with dementia to be hidden, particularly not from a football club they've supported for 50 years. I want them in the ground. So that's what I'm about.
Thank you. So it's about that awareness. It's about recognising if somebody's a bit slower or looks maybe, we'll often get a complaint from a fan with a hidden disability that the stewards thought they were drunk or they were on drugs. And it's about making sure that we are including this in all of the awareness training and really making sure that people...
Something that I just picked up today, because I'm not a disability professional, as you can probably tell, is if football clubs and football organisations and administrators address the needs of people with disabilities, it's a win for absolutely everybody, isn't it? And I really like the idea of it's an Olympic Games, it's actually a Paralympic Games. Yeah. I think that's a message that I'm certainly going to take back from this conference. And as I say, I'll be around. I'll probably in the same pub as the guys here. If you want to talk about dementia, more than well to have a chat.
Thank you very much, John. I'd like to ask if there are any specific questions before asking Kathryn one last question. Has anybody got any burning questions? I'm very mindful we're running very late, so if you've got a burning question, put your hand up now or make yourself known. If not, can I ask you to catch up with our colleagues and our guest speakers after the event? But I just want to end with Kathryn, because you started this whole session with a presentation I think many of us, me included, and I'm really sensitised on this topic, had not given enough attention or thought to. And when we look at the sheer numbers of people that it affects, and it affects their match day enjoyment, when we look at the fact that players are hiding this condition for fear of maybe not getting picked or dropped from the team, we've clearly got a lot of work to do. Now, thinking of your own children, what would be your last message for this evening to everybody here?
Sort it out.
That's a very good message.
That's what he wants. He's 13 and he turned that Liverpool match off. He stood there with his hands on his hips, this was about a year ago, and he looked at that and he said, what is the point? Click. Off to his bedroom. That's what they're doing. They might not be telling you that's what they're doing, but they're telling me that's what they're doing, and you don't want it. You don't want your sponsors going, hang on, how many people did you say just turned off that match I paid a fortune for? Because when they get wind of it, that's what they might do. I would.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to get it sorted. I think that's a very good way to end the day. Thank you very much to all our panel. Thank you very much to all of you. Can I say a very special thank you to all of the translators, the sign language interpreters, the simultaneous translation. They've worked so hard today.